My family forced me to hand over my college fund so my cousin could buy a new car, claiming you'll never make it anyway. When I hesitated, my aunt mocked, "Guess you're not as smart as you thought." Hours later, I took matters into my own hands. My cousin wanted a new car and my family decided I should give him my college fund. My aunt claimed I wouldn't make it anyway. When I resisted, she insulted me in front of everyone. Instead of arguing, I dug up proof of her years of tax fraud and submitted it to the IRS. I also managed to secure emergency aid and still go to college. She lost everything. I built a new life. She still doesn't know it was me. "I'm just saying," my Aunt Sharon said, arms crossed, "what good is that college fund if you're not going to make it through a semester?" We were sitting in her backyard in Liberty, Missouri. The air was thick with barbecue smoke and August humidity. My cousin Brett leaned against the deck railing, tossing a football between his hands, not saying anything. But his smirk said enough. "I'm going," I said quietly, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone. "University of Chicago starts in 3 weeks. "That's a long way to go just to fail and come home with debt," Sharon snapped, then turned to my mom. "I mean, wouldn't it be better if that money went to something useful? Like a car Brett can use for work?" My mom didn't say anything. She looked tired, like always. 2 jobs, arthritis, and still trying to defend me in rooms where people made their minds up about me long ago. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for years. I'm not like the rest of my family. I was the quiet kid, the bookworm, the one who didn't drink at parties or go to football games. While everyone else stayed in Liberty and started working or having kids young, I kept my head down, studied, and chased the one thing that had always felt like a ticket out: education. My mom, Teresa, was the only one who believed in me. She'd scraped together that college fund over 15 years. Birthday money, tax refunds, double shifts. I watched her skip meals just to make the numbers add up. And now, they wanted to take it and give it to Brett because he didn't want to take the bus to work. Sharon and Ron, my aunt and uncle, were never subtle about how they saw me. I was the charity case. The quiet nephew with ideas above his station. And Brett? He was their pride and joy. Tall, athletic, drove like he was in a car commercial, and coasted through life on confidence alone. He'd totaled 2 cars already and blamed the icy roads both times, once in June. When I got into the University of Chicago, everyone acted surprised. Not proud, surprised. Ron even jokes, they must be lowering standards. At that barbecue, when they brought up the idea of using my fund for Brett's new car, it was like they were discussing a community resource. As if my mom's sacrifices were just up for redistribution. They even tried spinning it like it was for me. "Think about it," Sharon had said. "He'll be able to give you rides when you're home from school. It's not like you'll need the money if you drop out." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. But when she sneered and said, "Guess you're not as smart as you thought," I snapped inside. She didn't know that I'd been collecting dirt on her for years, casually at first. She'd once bragged at Christmas, drunk on boxed wine, that she found a way to keep the IRS out of her pockets. I'd laughed with everyone else but secretly took mental notes. She had documents lying around. Fake dependents, forged signatures, shell company nonsense. One night, 2 years earlier, I'd even snapped a picture of one of her business expense reports she left out on the kitchen counter while I was dog-sitting. I hadn't planned on using any of it. But that night, after the barbecue, I sat in bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. Something in me hardened. I realized that if I didn't protect what was mine now, I'd spend the rest of my life letting people like Sharon decide what I deserved. So I got to work. I didn't know much about the IRS, but I knew they had a tip line. I filled out the form. I uploaded everything I had, photos, notes, even a voice memo from one Thanksgiving where she joked about her imaginary kids. I wrote out a statement explaining the situation in as much detail as I could. I felt sick doing it. Not guilty, just aware of how big it was. I wasn't a vengeful person. But I was done being passive. After that, I focused on school. I called the financial aid office at the University of Chicago and explained what happened. I didn't go into every messy detail, but I was honest. The woman on the phone sounded sympathetic. She said she'd talk to someone and get back to me. 2 days later, I got an email offering an emergency assistance package. Between that, a housing stipend, and a couple of private grants from alumni, they'd covered almost everything. I just needed to come up with $2,000 on my own. I worked every day for the next month. I bagged groceries, mowed lawns, cleaned out garages, anything anyone would pay me for. By the time I boarded the Greyhound to Chicago, I had $2,043 in my bank account and one suitcase to my name. I didn't tell anyone in my family when I left. Back home, the fallout hit hard and fast. Sharon was audited. She lost her job within a few weeks after the investigation started. Brett's car, yes, they had bought it, using what was left of my fund, was repossessed when their accounts were frozen. Ron's small business got dragged in too. Apparently, he'd been claiming fake losses using Sharon's fake consulting service. They tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. Then as a witch hunt. Eventually, Sharon just left town. She moved to Texas, started over, and blocked half the family on Facebook. Brett bounced from job to job, and the last I heard, he was living in a rented trailer and working security at a warehouse. I never responded to the emails they sent, asking if I knew anything. My mom never admitted anything either. I told her about the financial aid, not the IRS report. She cried when she found out I could still go. I didn't look back after I got off that bus in Chicago. The air felt different. The noise, the pace, the anonymity, it was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. I moved into the dorms a few days early and tried to settle into a routine. I was surrounded by students whose parents were professors, CEOs, and entrepreneurs. They had expensive laptops, noise-canceling headphones, and flew home on breaks. I had a refurbished Dell, earbuds I'd found on sale, and a second-hand coat that still had a faint scent of mothballs. And yet, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like I belonged, because I had fought to be there. Not just academically, but in every possible way. The first semester was cruel. The classes were harder than anything I'd faced. I was working 2 part-time jobs, one in the library, the other cleaning classrooms in the early mornings. I barely slept. There were moments I thought maybe Sharon was right. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe this was too much. But then I'd remember her words, the laughter around the barbecue table, the way Brett had looked at me like I was a fool. And I'd get back to work. I didn't make friends right away, but eventually, I found a rhythm. I met people who, like me, had come from nothing and were trying to build something better. One girl, Anika, came from a similar background. We'd stay up studying together in the common rooms, swapping stories about family dysfunction, cold dinners, and what we were running from. Survival, she said once, while flipping through a biology textbook. That's what this is. We're not just learning, we're surviving. I couldn't have said it better. Back home, things stayed chaotic. My mom called me once every couple of weeks, just to check in. She'd tell me bits and pieces about what was happening back in Liberty. The IRS investigation had unearthed more than anyone expected: offshore accounts, forged signatures, income discrepancies. Sharon had been skating for years. Apparently, Uncle Ron had tried to sue someone, claiming he was set up, but it went nowhere. Brett had moved in with a girl who kicked him out after 2 months. He tried to start a YouTube channel about car culture, but it never took off. They still hadn't connected me to any of it. One call with my mom really stuck with me. She told me she'd bumped into Sharon's sister, my Aunt Marla, at the grocery store. Marla asked how I was doing. I said you were doing fine, my mom said, voice carefully neutral. She didn't say much, she continued, but you should have seen her face when I told her you got a paid internship for the summer. That internship had come from one of my professors, who'd been impressed with a policy paper I wrote. I spent that summer living in a cramped studio apartment in D.C., working long hours and eating ramen again, just like home. But I loved it. Every moment of it. Back in Liberty, Sharon filed for bankruptcy. Her house was seized. Ron tried to sell off their remaining assets, but most of them were either under scrutiny or already gone. And still, no one knew. It took a few years, but eventually the gossip died down. The family stopped talking about it altogether. When I visited home for the holidays, briefly, and only to see my mom, no one brought it up. They tiptoed around the wrongdoing like it had just happened to them. Brett showed up once while I was home, but we didn't talk. He stood at the edge of the yard, staring like he wanted to say something, but then turned and left. That was the last time I saw him in person. By the time I graduated, I had a few job offers lined up. I chose one that focused on educational equity, something close to my heart. I moved to Philadelphia and started over again, this time with a salary, an apartment I didn't have to share, and a life that was truly mine. My mom eventually quit her second job. I started helping with her bills, sent her money every month without her having to ask. She cried the first time I told her she didn't have to worry about groceries anymore. It was all worth it, she said. Every single penny. And then, one evening a few years later, something unexpected happened. I got a message from Brett. It was short. Just one sentence. Do you have time to talk? I stared at it for a long time. It was sent through LinkedIn of all places. No profile picture, no details. Just his name and that one line. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. But I couldn't help but wonder, what did he want? Did he know? Or was it just guilt, festering over time? Maybe he remembered that look I gave him at the barbecue, when I didn't argue. When I just looked back at him, I was silent. Maybe, somehow, he knew that the quiet one had finally spoken. I didn't reply to Brett's message right away. In fact, I didn't reply at all. Not for weeks. I kept coming back to it, opening it, reading that single line, then closing the tab. It sat there like a stone in my shoe, something small and insignificant that still managed to ruin my peace whenever I tried to move forward. I started imagining all the reasons why he might want to talk. Maybe he found out. Maybe Sharon had finally pieced it together after years of denial. Or maybe he was just trying to clear his conscience. Try and shake hands across a bridge he burned to the ground years ago. Maybe it was just curiosity. Or worse, pity. The idea that he might think I needed something from him after everything, I couldn't stomach it. I didn't tell my mom about the message. She wouldn't have told me what to do, but I knew she'd worry. She always did. Even now that I was making more money than she ever had, even now that I lived hundreds of miles away, she still asked every time we spoke if I was eating okay, or if my heat was working. That was just who she was. Instead, I let the message sit. Unanswered. Unread, technically, though we both knew I'd read it. A month went by. Then two. Life carried on. Work was steady, fulfilling. I was now managing a grant program aimed at supporting first-generation college students in public schools. Most of them were kids like I'd been, smart, but written off by their families. Quiet, but burning with potential. Every time I helped one of them navigate a complicated financial aid situation or connected them with a mentor, it felt like I was writing about some cosmic imbalance. Then, a second message came in. Hey, I don't want to bother you. Just wanted to talk. I've been thinking about the past a lot. I think I owe you some kind of apology. Or at least a conversation. This time, I didn't close the tab. I stared at the words longer. Apology. It was almost laughable. As if words could scrub away what had happened. As if one conversation could undo the years of contempt, the theft of a future they thought I didn't deserve, the public humiliation of being laughed at for daring to dream outside a small Missouri town. Still, something in me shifted. Not forgiveness. Not sympathy. But curiosity. I typed a reply. Then deleted it. Typed again. Then finally, without thinking too hard, I hit send. You wanted to talk. So talk. He responded within the hour. We ended up on a video call a few days later. I made sure to do it on a Saturday, in the late afternoon, when the light through my apartment window was soft and there were no looming deadlines. I wasn't sure what I expected, but the face that appeared on my screen wasn't the Brett I remembered. He looked older than his age, like life had aged him faster than it should have. His hairline had crept back, his skin was tired. There was a hollowness around his eyes, the kind you can't fake or hide. Hey, he said awkwardly, eyes flicking to the camera, then away. Thanks for agreeing to this. I said nothing. He cleared his throat, rubbed the back of his neck. I guess I just wanted to say. I've been thinking about what happened. A lot. About that summer. The car. The money. Everything. I stayed silent, letting him fill the space. I was in a hole, he said finally. Spoiled. Entitled. I didn't understand what that money meant. I thought it was just sitting there, not being used. I didn't even question it. He paused again. I know I didn't deserve it. I know what we did to you was wrong. And I'm not asking you to forgive it. I wanted you to know I see it now. I see everything. I tilted my head slightly. Why now? He looked down. Because I lost everything. And I realized. You were the only one who ever really worked for what you had. And we treated you like trash for it. There was sincerity in his voice, but I wasn't sure it mattered. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry either. Just distant. You never said anything back then, I said, finally. Not even after they tore into me. You stood there and let them. I know, he said, eyes glassy. I thought staying quiet made me innocent. It didn't. There was a long silence between us. He sighed. After the IRS stuff, after Mom lost everything, I tried to get clean. I've been sober for 2 years now. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to fix things. I know I can't undo the past, but I guess I'm hoping I can at least stop pretending it didn't happen. I nodded slowly. There was a weight in the room, one that hadn't left even when I moved away. It had just followed me in different forms. Okay, I said. Then let's not pretend. He blinked, surprised. I'm the one who reported your mom, I said flatly. To the IRS. I had proof. I sent it all in. His face didn't change at first. Then slowly, the shock registered. He started, then stopped. I kind of figured. Eventually. He exhaled, looking down at his lap. I don't blame you. We did that to ourselves. He didn't ask why I did it. He didn't try to argue or beg for understanding. And that, weirdly, was the most honest thing he'd ever done. I watched him for another moment, then closed my laptop without saying goodbye. I sat there for a long time afterward. The city buzzed outside my window. A siren in the distance, a dog barking, someone laughing on a balcony across the street. I didn't feel guilty. Or pride. Just peace. I hadn't destroyed anything. I hadn't taken revenge. I'd protected myself. I'd done what no one else had been willing to do. And for once, even the silence felt like closure. The following days after that call, I didn't think about it much, at least not consciously. I went to work, attended meetings, reviewed funding reports, and met with school counselors. But at night, when the city quieted down and I was left with my thoughts, my mind drifted back to Brett's face on that screen. Not because I regretted anything. I didn't. But because it was strange to finally see someone who had played such a large part in a painful chapter of my life. Small. Humans. Flawed. I'd spent so long using anger as armor that it was weird to be left with something softer. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just space. Space to think. Space to be. Space to live without the weight of proving myself anymore. But of course, family isn't a vacuum. You can't isolate one person without the others feeling it. And news, no matter how quiet, always makes its rounds in small towns. About a week later, I got a call from Aunt Marla. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since the fallout. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hey, her voice started, slow and uncertain. I heard you spoke to Brett. He told me. Said he finally had the guts to face you. Look, I want to say I'm glad. You deserved better than what happened. A lot better. I know I didn't say much back then. Probably because I was scared of Sharon. She bulldozed everyone, you know that. But I see now that staying silent made me part of it too. Anyway, I hope you're okay. Take care of yourself. I didn't call back. I appreciated the message, but I had nothing left to say. That part of my life, Liberty, Missouri, cookouts in Sharon's backyard, sitting in silence while people laughed at my dreams, it wasn't mine anymore. I'd left it behind with good reason. Still, the calls and messages started trickling in after that. Some cousins, some old neighbors. All of them seemingly waking up to their roles in what happened. I didn't engage. I wasn't angry with them. I just didn't need to reopen wounds that had already scarred over. One message did stand out, though. It was from my old high school teacher, Mr. Halpern. He taught APUS history, the only advanced placement class our tiny school could afford to offer. He was the first adult outside my mother who treated me like I might actually do something with my life. His message came through email, subject line, proud of you. He'd seen my name in an article highlighting education reform advocates under 35. Apparently, one of the guidance counselors I worked with in Philly had nominated me. I always knew you were going to break out of Liberty, he wrote. They called you quiet, but you were focused. Driven. You didn't whine or make excuses, you worked. Whatever happened in those final years, I'm glad you kept going. You deserved better. If you're ever back in town, coffee's on me. That one, I replied to. We exchanged a few emails. Nothing too deep, just catching up, hearing about how things had changed back home. Sharon's house had been sold off in an estate auction. Ron had disappeared off social media completely. Brett apparently started coaching part-time at the local community center, helping at-risk teens. I didn't know how I felt about that. I didn't trust it, but I didn't scoff either. People change. Sometimes. Mr. Halpern told me something I didn't expect to hear. You became the story parents tell their kids now, he said. The one about the kid who got out and made it. People say your name with a mix of awe and guilt. That struck me. Not the pride part, but the guilt. Because for years, I was the cautionary tale. The kid they used as a punchline. The book-smart but naive example. And now? Now they were repackaging me into something convenient. Inspirational. I wasn't angry about it. Just wary. Stories change, especially when people want to clean up their past mistakes without doing the work to own them. Still, I couldn't deny the strange power of hearing that. It didn't make up for what I lost, but it felt like something had shifted. Then came the letter. A real letter, in a white envelope, addressed by hand to my office in Philly. No return address, just the words "From Liberty" scrawled on the back. I opened it at my desk one slow Thursday afternoon. Inside was a single piece of lined paper. Neat, slanted handwriting filled the page. It was from Sharon. I hadn't seen her handwriting in years. It hadn't changed. She started with pleasantries, how she hoped I was well, that she'd heard from Brett that I was doing good work, that it meant a lot to her that I took the time to speak with him. And then the shift. She wrote, I know we've had our differences. I know things were said and done that can't be taken back. But I want you to know, I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was right for the family. For Brett. I thought you'd be fine no matter what. You always seemed so capable. Like you didn't need the help. That line sat like lead in my chest. You didn't need the help. It was the same flawed logic she'd always operated under, that because I was strong, or resilient, or just quiet enough not to complain, I didn't need support. That being capable somehow meant I should carry more, accept less, and smile through it. She went on to say she was trying to make peace with her past. That she was in therapy. That she was sorry. Not for the fraud. Not for the manipulation. But for how things made me feel. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was an explanation, a justification in softer words. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and tucked it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away. I didn't frame it either. I just kept it. A relic. A reminder. A few weeks later, Brett sent me another message. Not long. Just a photo of a small whiteboard in what looked like a rec center classroom. On it was a quote in black marker, "We rise by lifting others." He didn't include any words. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. The months rolled on, and life continued its steady, upward rhythm. My work became more than just a job, it became a mission. The kids I mentored reminded me so much of myself, overlooked, underestimated, clinging to hope while drowning in noise from people who told them they wouldn't make it. Every time I sat across from one of them in a counselor's office or at a school career day, I gave them what no one in my family ever gave me, belief. One of them, Malik, was a soft-spoken 17-year-old who reminded me so much of myself it hurt. Brilliant in math, but constantly skipped over by teachers. He told me once that his uncle said, "Ain't no money in dreams, kid. Get a trade and stop wasting time." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Some of us make the money in dreams. You just haven't seen it yet." A few months after that, he won a state scholarship for engineering. He cried when I told him. I didn't. I'd already cried enough in my life. Meanwhile, back in Liberty, the wheels were still turning. Sharon's letter stayed tucked away. I never replied. I never intended to. Brett, though, kept checking in, always respectfully, never too much. He didn't ask for anything, didn't pry. Just quiet updates every now and then. I still wasn't interested in a relationship, but I appreciated the shift. It was human. Then came the invitation. The Liberty High School Alumni Foundation wanted to host a speaker series for their upcoming graduation week. Someone, I guessed Mr. Halpern, had nominated me. They wanted to fly me in, all expenses paid, and have me speak to the graduating class about resilience, ambition, and overcoming obstacles. I almost said no. But something inside me said otherwise. So I went back. It had been nearly a decade since I last stepped foot in Liberty. The bus terminal hadn't changed. The gas station still sold stale coffee and overcooked hot dogs. The town was smaller than I remembered, not physically, but emotionally. Like I'd outgrown it without realizing it. Mr. Halpern met me at the school entrance. He looked the same, older, maybe a little grayer, but still sharp-eyed and quietly proud. "Big day," he said, handing me a visitor's badge. "Some of these kids have never left Missouri. You're going to blow their minds." "Let's not overpromise," I said, smiling. He led me to the auditorium. It was strange being in that space again, now standing at the front instead of sitting quietly in the back corner. I saw myself in those folding chairs, slumped, tired, half dreaming of escape. The room was filled with students. Then teachers. Then a few local parents. I recognized faces here and there. Some old neighbors. A coach I once overheard telling someone I'd never last in a big city. And then, from the side doors, Sharon walked in. She sat at the far edge, near the back, beside Brett. I felt it, a tightness in my chest, but it didn't overwhelm me. I was no longer the kid desperate for approval. I was no longer afraid of being told I wasn't good enough. I had already proven that I was. I gave my speech. I talked about dreams, not the shiny ones on billboards or the vague ones in yearbooks, but the gritty, ugly dreams you had to fight for. I talked about what it meant to grow up hearing you won't make it, and why that kind of noise is always louder when you're closest to proving it wrong. I didn't mention names. I didn't call anyone out. But I saw the looks, familiar looks of recognition, discomfort, guilt. And then, as I wrapped up, I said this: sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong with anger or cruelty. It's living well. It's building the kind of life that can't be touched by their doubt. And when you do that, when you rise above it, you don't need them to see it. You don't need them to clap. You're already free. The room went silent. Then applause. Loud, long, real. When it was over, students came up, shaking my hand, asking questions, taking pictures. I saw Brett at the back, standing quietly, arms crossed. He didn't approach. But Sharon did. She walked up slowly, wearing a plain blouse, her face worn, no makeup this time. She stopped just a few feet away. "You were right," she said softly. I waited. "I took from you. All of us did. And you still got further than any of us ever dreamed. I can't fix it. I just wanted you to know. I see it now." I nodded. Not out of kindness, but out of closure. "That's good," I said. "Took you long enough." She blinked at that, but nodded. There was no venom in my voice, just fact. Then I turned and walked away. Back in Philly, my life continued. I started my own scholarship foundation, one for first-gen college students from low-income families. I named it The Quiet Ones. Brett made a donation a few months after the launch. A small one, but it came with a note: to the ones we underestimated. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They could live with the echoes of what they did. I was living proof that I didn't need them to clap, forgive, or even like me. I had already won.